Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and this morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from the Legal Action Group. It's a title we have reviewed before. This particular work is, I think, very, very important. It's called Homelessness and Allocations, and it's been written by Andrew Arden, Queen's Counsel, Justin Bates and Toby Vanhegan, and it's actually written in collaboration with Arden Chambers. Elizabeth and I talked about the book, and she's been the lead writer on this occasion for the work. This is actually the review that we've produced, and our title for our book review is The Definitive Guide to the Rights of the Homeless, now in a new 11th edition. And can I say at the outset that these reviews are done on the basis of information for people who need help, both either as practitioners doing legal research or for people who are unrepresented and can hopefully handle much of the paperwork and some of the parts of the proceedings themselves. Now let's have a look at the book first of all. It's a heavy one, it's a paperback, very much the style of Legal Action Group. There's the front, you can see the spine. Then at the back you can probably not make out very much by way of what is said, but you can see that the weight of the book. You can also see the shaded area, which is the appendices part of the book. If I go to the back of it, there is a small index at the back, over 1,000 pages long, this book. The index is by paragraph numbering, not page numbering, so do be careful of that when you're actually using the index. When you get to the appendix, they of course are very detailed. The appendices are very substantial, and you can see from the list here what you've actually got. Now if we go to the front of the book, you'll see that that is the front page, and of course there's some information about each of the authors on that side. Then we get to the blurb about LAG, the legal, the access to justice charity. And can I just point out that this book is available as an e-book. Then you've got a detailed contents section all the way through. There are in fact a total of 15 chapters. Then you have the appendices. Then you have a very substantial amount of case law. This is very case heavy, this subject, so you can see the case is running all the way through. Then of course we have the tables of statutes, also very important. In addition to that, we have the statutory instruments which come with it, and then finally we have some table of European legislation which will be relevant even now. I know we're leaving the European Union in 6 months' time on Brexit Day, but the European legislation is important. Then there are international conventions as well which are covered, and after that you have a very useful abbreviations section. And that actually is extremely helpful because there is a lot of abbreviation throughout the whole of the legal world these days, but this does help you. Then you get to the structure of the book. Chapter 1, you see that there is an index to the chapter right at the beginning, and then after that you've got the paragraph numbering, so you can find things quickly, and of course there is, you can see a little bit of footnoting there. There's footnoting on most of the pages, as you can see, and of course the footnoting is important because that refers to the cases, the statutes, and of course the rather more heavy detail which you may well be looking for depending on what legal research you're carrying out. So what do we say about this book? We say this: would you believe it that it's been 36 years since this now classic and definitive legal text on homelessness was first published, and now here it is again in a new 11th edition from LAG, the Legal Action Group. And as you would expect, it's been completely updated to include the most recent legislation, and in particular the Homelessness Reduction Act of 2017, and also the development of homelessness law in Wales under the Housing Wales Act Part 2 and the new Care Act 2014 regime. And can I just say on the Care Act that this is a very complex piece of legislation. I've already had a number of cases involving the Act. It's not an easy Act to follow, and I do think it's very important for people, certainly now, to be aware of the implications of the Act, because it can affect whether someone can become homeless because of the costs of care. I say that because I think it's becoming of much more importance very, very recently. And of course, of equal importance in the book is the 2018 Homelessness Code of Guidance and the new local authority agreement, which are put into the book, together with, for example, updated guidance on provisions for accommodation for young people aged 16 and 17 who may be homeless. And that, of course, is a particularly difficult area, bearing in mind the age of consent is 16, but the majority, for all purposes, generally speaking, today is 18. Although 21 can be the case in certain circumstances. Now, homelessness, its causes and possible solutions encompass serious and inevitably complex issues. And that's one of the reasons why LAG is so important, because of the work they do for us as practitioners and for unrepresented parties. And the book, of course, deals with homelessness in all its manifestations and forms, in addition to the established criteria for homelessness. And they touch on related areas of law, such as asylum and immigration. And I think, again, that's an important area which overlaps. And again, the Legal Action Group have excellent publications in those areas too. A major benefit of the book is the clarity of its discourse and overall user friendliness. And the authors, many of whom will be known to you, Andrew Arden, Queen's Counsel, Justin Bates and Toby Vanhegan, all come from Arden Chambers, and they're amply well qualified in this particular field of substantive law. The Chambers itself was founded in the 1990s to provide a centre for specialist practice, particularly in the area of housing law and local government. And that is actually a very good example of what is happening to many sets of chambers today, which tend to become much more specialised. It's inevitable. Certainly in my years at the bar, I have seen from having a very wide area of practice to having had to narrow it down because of the complexities in some areas, and homelessness and the whole of housing law itself, which is very high up the political agenda, is a subject which of course does require specialist knowledge. Now, Arden himself has presided over the evolution of this book, from its first edition, which appeared in 1982, to the latest 2018 edition, and is, as pointed out by LAG, he's contributed to and helped to shape the development of this area of law, acting in cases up to and including the highest courts, from the earliest days of the new law to the present time. And that's another, I believe, very useful point for people to understand, and that is that barristers such as Arden are people who are the people who actually create the law through the case law itself, and actually they identify the issues which are then ruled upon by the bench. Those needing to do further research will appreciate that in addition to the book's 1,000 pages or so, there are also 100 pages of tables, statutes, statutory instruments, the European legislation and the international conventions, and 3 pages, of course, of abbreviations. And I think it's important to note there are about 200 pages of appendices, that's in the shaded box part of the book at the back, containing additional statutes, statutory instruments and guidance, because we are very, very codified today in this particular area of law. So the case law is very important, but of course you've also got to bear in mind the interpretation of the Acts of Parliament. It may be a bulky tome, you might think, but no, as it's presented in a handy paperback format, we think it provides in practice a book which is remarkably easy to use, as long as you understand the structure that LAG adopt, which I think is very logical and straightforward. There's very useful, copious footnoting. The numbered paragraphs throughout make it easy to find, and of course the detailed index at the back is another useful cross-referencing. And the key, of course, to any law book, which you will find out when you're actually an undergraduate, is to know how to use the content section and the index at the back to cross-refer and find things quickly. In open book, exams. That's particularly important for all you students out there. Now let me conclude by saying this. For professionals dealing with the difficulties inherent in this sensitive area of law, including those employed by local authorities and housing associations, the accuracy and accessibility of this now up-to-date text makes it an essential purchase, and it should certainly be in every local authority housing office and housing association office, and it should be available in your public library and in citizens' advice offices. And the date of the publication is cited as at 2018, round about the sort of middle of the year. Let's just look at the book one more time. There it is there, the front, then the spine, then the back. You can see the shaded area, which gives you an idea of how substantial the schedules are and the actual statutes themselves. The Housing Act, of course, itself is printed, which is very helpful. Just opening it in the middle somewhere. Let's have a look. Local connection. Here we go. This is about homelessness and special circumstances. Again, all the subject matter and the topics which will probably be asked of you as counsel or solicitors or advisors should be in this book. You can see the footnoting at the bottom there, and you can also see the paragraph numbering at the sides. So it's relatively easy to make your way through the book. And as I say, right at the beginning, chapter 1, what in fact Arden has done is he talks about the history and the policy of the provisions right at the beginning. And as I indicated in my comments, the point at the moment is that this is a subject which has gone up the political agenda for a lot of reasons. It's the availability of housing stock itself, the complete lack of earning potential by many people to be able to buy a property, and therefore the need to look very clearly at what the resources are and how we deal with the subject, and of course how you can get some form of assistance from the legal system if you have a problem of some sort. So there's the book. Very big thanks to everybody involved, and I'd like to thank the Legal Action Group very much again. You make our lives a great deal easier, and I say that not just from the people who just read the book as unrepresented parties, but from practitioners' points of view, and also of course from the bench. Thank you very much to everybody concerned. We're very grateful indeed. Bye-bye.